Welcome to this episode of The Kandis Show. I'm Candace Palmer, and today I had an amazing conversation with a dear friend of mine, Alison Mendoza. She's earned tons of respect in a male-dominated industry of engineering. She's involved with 3D printing, and it's changing the world. You won't want to miss this. Alison, thanks so much for coming on to The Kandis Show. The reason I had you on is because I think you're such a inspirational female entrepreneur in a male-dominated industry. And so I just kind of wanted you to share your story a little bit with the audience.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thanks for having me. Obviously, it's great to see you. I've been watching your previous episodes, so I'm really excited to be here and contribute to the Kandis Show, and hopefully share an inspirational story to other females out there that are maybe similar to you and I.
Yeah.
Boss ladies.
Yeah, right. Hashtag.
in the industry. So, I guess where should we start?
Well, I mean, we met, I don't know, like
almost 4 years ago.
Yeah, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I helped you, buy a house, and then we became friends. And then over glasses of wine, your story became so fascinating for me that I wanted to share it. So tell me a little bit about like your industry and kind of how you got started and what makes you different in your industry.
Sure. So obviously when we met, I was working in aerospace, so moved to Phoenix to work with Honeywell. And I guess it was about 2 years in with Honeywell that I was introduced to additive manufacturing, which is an industrial term for 3D printing, which is a common term that a lot of people are familiar with. And in a nutshell, I was supporting major airlines in the United States, and several of them fly really old, aged fleet. And so supporting them from a spare part standpoint was becoming difficult. We were having a hard time locating some of these older parts to go on these old planes, and having a hard time locating the tooling needed to produce some of these older parts. And when I say older, older than I am, probably.
That's comforting. We're flying around on old airplanes.
But they're well taken care of. So we were challenged with trying to find, it was a really simple welding fixture, just a pretty basic piece of metal tooling that we needed to produce a final part. And it was going to take a couple of months from our supplier to get that part. So obviously the airline would feel it, and the end result was actually it was going to ground a couple aircraft. So it was a pretty big deal. So I did an intranet search on the Honeywell internal blog, and I found a gentleman there. And I remember to this day, and we still laugh when we meet for beers when I get to see him, and we read through my email that I sent to him. And I said, hello, I don't know you, and I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I've heard about 3D printing, and is it possible that you could help me with my problem? And he wrote back in a matter of hours, and I think it was about 72 hours later, we had a part printed.
Stop.
And the shop floor had the tool that they needed. So that was just like you're doing now. It was an aha moment for me. And I said, I want to work in this industry. And it's a relatively new industry. Although 3D printing is not a new technology, it's been around for almost 30 years, if not more. But industrial additive manufacturing in real production type scenarios it's pretty new. And so when I joined, this was about 2.5 years ago that I left Honeywell. I've seen it change a lot, even in those 2 years.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
Yeah, it really is. And that's specific to aerospace. It's applicable.
Tell me more applications, because when we've chatted over wine, like I said, and I left that happy hour with you, and I was just like blown away. Like my brain was just in overload that all this technology could advance and change like so many lives. And I think that's what I was really blown away by.
Yeah, I think you saw an article out of South by Southwest about the 3D printing of the houses.
Yes.
And that it had so much coverage. It was great because a lot of people actually knew at that point, hey, 3D printing is a real technology. It's diverse. It's applicable with multiple materials and multiple industries, and it's not just a turbine blade and a jet engine that people are printing. You can actually do a lot with it across all the different technologies. So, it was really exciting to see you excited about it because as an enthusiast and someone that works in the industry, my goal is to get as many people talking about it as possible.
Oh, I had no idea. Like, I felt like a kid on Christmas morning, kind of. I'm like, oh my gosh, that you could actually, like, well, not you maybe, but in the industry, you could print like a concrete, right? Mm-hmm. And leave spaces for plumbing and all kinds of things, right?
Yeah, and I just saw, so that's not my area that I focus in, but I do follow it, and so I try to. It's rapidly changing and rapidly growing, but I did see that, I believe it was a branch of the military, it might have been the Marine Corps, the Army, but they were testing out printing buildings overseas at the bases overseas using 3D printing with concrete, and it was deemed successful, so they're going to be looking at that more seriously moving forward.
Well, I think I'm obviously in real estate, so that was fascinating.
Yeah.
But on a deeper level for me personally, like, I know that my main mission is to, have this orphanage in Africa, and I just recognized at that moment, oh my gosh, what's really possible if we were able to get 3D printers over there and start printing places for them to live and tools it could just endless opportunity.
I don't think we fully understand the potential.
That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, and if I can inspire anyone to hear this, think about it, put your creative hat on, and say, I'm going to look at this with fresh eyes and think about all the new opportunities that 3D printing can open doors to, then this would be a success for me. But yeah, I think oftentimes we get so focused in the industry that we work in or the application we're trying to produce with it, we forget that, there's probably a lot we could do with it. On that note about, influencing or changing people's lives with the technology, one area that I don't get to work in professionally often, but from a personal standpoint, I'm very interested in and I try to be involved in is using 3D printing or additive manufacturing for humanitarian aid. I've actually flown out to Memphis and met with FedEx. This was probably 6 months ago. They announced that they were ready to go all in and start exploring additive manufacturing or 3D printing, and they were ramping up a global team to have a large impact. And they asked me to put together a 5-minute presentation on how I thought FedEx could have an impact using this technology.
Could you get it in 5 minutes?
It was hard, but I did. The hardest part was that I had 48 hours to prepare. So that was the difficult part.
Hence why you're amazing.
It was really, but it was exciting, and I knew the topic that I would talk about. It was putting it all together and making it look nice, and then having it ready to go. But I talked about humanitarian aid, and if you look at FedEx and their mission, I forget what the slogan is, but they have a group that does they go anytime that there's a disaster. Yeah, they send out a team. And so I decided, let's look at all the different natural disasters that they've been a part of over the last 2 or 3 years. And I did a slideshow with I think it was Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Harvey in Houston, Hurricane Irma, and a couple others that I listed photos of, and then there were photos of the FedEx employees there. And then I shared a statistic that I think it was 1 in 8 didn't have access to fresh water after a natural disaster. I don't remember the statistic exactly, but it was something substantial. And how many millions around the world in general don't have access to fresh water. And I brought with me a 3D printed water filter. It's actually this exact color, and it's made out of the same plastic.
Okay.
And I printed it on my home printer the night before I left. I downloaded the file, the design, to tell the printer what to print, for free from the internet, and printed it and took it with me. And I think it took a couple of hours to print, not long. And I shared that with FedEx, and I said, imagine you're having to ship airplanes full of fresh water.
Yeah.
Well, what if you could ship a printer with plastic material and in turn print thousands of water filters? And obviously the actual business case behind it, would have to be looked at in more detail, but it was more of an inspiring story to show, hey, you guys are known for being a shipping company and a logistics company, and you can
such a big impact.
Have a real impact now
Yes.
when you can produce things on site versus shipping them around the world. It went over really well, and I think I inspired some of the folks in the room.
I'm sure you did.
And so that was one. And then another kind of neat opportunity to use 3D printing and humanitarian aid is, again, online. You can find files or drawings of different types of sandals and shoes. Mm-hmm. And they're made of a different plastic than the plastic that you print water filters with, but it's a plastic that you and I can access and use in a home printer if we wanted to. And you can print actual sandals or soles of shoes for a relatively cheap price per pair.
I mean, look how that could impact third world countries.
Yeah.
That just blows my mind. The fact that we have kids that are, living impoverished lives and living without, it breaks my heart. And to see something, I think that's why I got so on fire.
Yeah.
To see that the potential of impacting those kids' lives is just it's emotional for me.
Yeah. But it's so great because that is, I believe that in order to really drive the adoption of the technology and to see more in high schools and middle schools where they introduce 3D printing to these kids, we need to be thinking that way. Mm-hmm. And so when you told me, or you sent me a text and said, I saw this 3D printed news come out of South by Southwest, I thought, this is great, because this is exactly what needs to happen. We need the general public to get excited about this.
Yeah. Well, and I was just reading an article before today, and it said that we could print tissue and organs and pizza. I mean, I just had to throw that part in there. But the organs and the in the tissue I was just like, what?
Yeah.
How does that change?
Yeah. I think so. I don't know a lot about that industry.
Yeah.
I know it is possible.
Uh-huh.
I know it's rapidly growing, but I don't know a lot about it. But it shows that the opportunities are
endless,
almost endless. Yeah.
Because you mentioned something about an eyeball.
Yeah. Yeah, I did read about a 3D printed retina.
Yeah.
It could be worth a Google search after to read more, because it's incredible.
Well, I'm just so fascinated by the industry and just by you. And you travel a lot too for your job, right?
Yes. I'm actually leaving tomorrow to travel again. I'm headed to Europe for actually the largest 3D printing conference of the year. Takes place next week. So will be a jam-packed week full of really great meetings with people from all different industries, all using additive in one way or another. It's in Frankfurt.
Fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that you're so passionate about your industry, but I'm kind of curious, how do you handle the travel and being newly married and, and the events that come after being married and,
Yeah.
How do you handle all that?
It'd probably be good to ask Paul that too, how Paul feels. But he's very supportive.
Good.
And I had to laugh the other day. I probably travel 50% of the month now. It's my life I've known for the last 10 years. So I don't know if I could be in a position that didn't allow me the chance to travel. I think I would go a little bit stir crazy, but I was home, and it was really nice to be home for a few days. Yeah. And we were sitting at the kitchen island having coffee, and I was about to release a blog. And I don't know if you do the same, but I reread my blog 100 times before I finally share it, and I'll edit it and cut things out and add things in. And I was going through that phase right before I was getting ready to share it. And I said to Paul, it was obviously about 3D printing. And I said, there's just so much I could say. I feel like I could talk about it for days. And he quietly put his cup of coffee down.
He's so cute.
And looked over and said, you do. And it was funny because, it's true.
He's like, I hear about it when I wake up. I hear about it when we go to bed. I hear about it at dinner.
All the time. But he's so supportive. I think that I've actually started to rub off on him a little bit, and I've got him, the other night he made a comment about a project he's working on at work, and he feels like it's a bit disruptive. And I perked up and said, oh, you just used the word disruptive. That's usually a word I use because 3D printing is disruptive. And he said, yeah, okay, it's exciting. So anyways, it helps to have a supportive husband.
Yeah, for sure. Well, with all that travel and work, what do you do for fun?
Probably the same thing that a lot of people that live in Phoenix do. We like to hike.
Oh, fun.
Especially now that it's nicer outside. Yes. But it always seems like I travel more when it cools off. It's always unfortunate.
It's hard to enjoy the weather we have here.
Yeah, there's not a lot of conferences and meetings that go on in June, July, and August, unfortunately. So I'm usually stuck here in the hot months. But we do like to travel, and we like to go up to Flagstaff and Sedona and spend the weekend there if we can.
Well, Arizona has so many great little day trips or little weekend getaway places.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. North or south. We really enjoy living out here. It's the 4 years have really flown by.
Yeah.
Lots of outdoor activities to do, and it's a fun place to live.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, you grew up in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Paul
grew up in New Mexico.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it's a little different. Well, I grew up in Oklahoma, so
yeah, probably similar to Texas.
Uh-huh. And you love red wine.
I do, and whiskey.
You do?
I do. I watched the entire season of Mad Men recently, several times through, but watched it again. Have you ever?
No.
Oh, you've got to get into it.
Yeah, because I love whiskey, I should watch that.
Well, that too. I think it will just heighten if you're a whiskey fan.
Okay.
Honestly, if I watched Mad Men at 10 in the morning, I would probably be tempted to walk over and pour myself a glass on ice. It's pretty much in every scene, and so it was getting back into that show and that series that started my interest in whiskey or increased interest in whiskey.
Increased, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start this whiskey club. I've been kind of talking about it, but so yeah, you want to just be part of the whiskey club?
You're in? Would be happy to be.
Oh, yes.
That would be great.
I'm really going to start it.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, a lot of good ideas for that. That's fun.
Yeah.
So who would you say has been the most influential person in your life?
That's a good question. I can think of someone immediately. I worked with him at Honeywell. His name is Alfredo Don Juan.
That's a great name.
Yes. It's a very powerful name.
It is.
I actually, when I first started at Honeywell, my boss said, you're going to be on a team that's supporting American Airlines. And the business manager who leads that team, his name is Alfredo. And I tried multiple times to get in touch with Alfredo. He's a very, very busy man, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Lots of meetings, lots of travel. And so we missed each other a few times and on IMs or emails or phone calls. And I remember thinking, is it me? Am I trying to approach this guy wrong? I know he's a very important man, but we need to meet each other.
I need you.
Yeah, we need to work together. And so it was kind of funny. The first time I met him in person was at a sales conference that we had, global Honeywell sales conference. And, I remember thinking, oh, he's actually really nice and really personable and really laid back. And I remember that first interaction very well, which says a lot because sometimes you meet people and you can't remember their name. I remember that day vividly. And so we became pretty close working together on that team. But he moved into a different role, and then I moved into a different role. and we would at that point go separate ways. But I made it a point, to pester him and send him texts every so often and say, Alfredo, how are you? I need some advice on this, or what do you think about that? And he slowly turned into a mentor for me. And I have shared it with him multiple times. I actually wrote a blog about it because he's been so influential and helpful to me.
Yeah, tell me about how.
He just, we're all very busy. And I think sometimes, you can think I'm too busy to even take someone's phone call. And you really can. I mean, there have been moments where I've had back-to-back meetings on my schedule and I don't have a single 5-minute window. And he always would make time to take my phone call, and it would never be rushed. And he would make sure I understood something if I had a question. It was just that it was a respectful thing for him to do to me, and it was thoughtful, and so for those reasons. And then he's also provided professional guidance in general, and introductions.
Yeah.
And all the basic stuff, that mentors do. And I'm very grateful.
Do you think that he kind of taught you a quality that you wanted to implement in your life to other people? Because I find I battle that thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a laundry list of things that I need to get done, and my phone's blowing up, and this and that, and you just try to prioritize, and sometimes it's inevitable that somebody gets left out. Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but so
it's hard. I just try to think to myself, it's everyone I work with, for the most part, I try to think of them as my friends. That's not to get too deep, but it's part of the human interaction. What's the purpose if you're not going to enjoy interacting with other people? And it takes 30 seconds to write someone back, even if it's just acknowledging their text message and say, hey, I'm really busy this week, I can get back to you next week. I also try to think how I feel when I reach out to someone and they're responsive. I would like to be able to make someone else feel that way. It wasn't until probably this year, maybe end of last year, this year, that I started feeling like I was ready to be a mentor for someone. I still call Alfredo. I still am very actively the one receiving the mentorship. But I feel like, I'm at the point now where I'm ready to give back and do that with others that are maybe just now starting in their career. Launching my blog has really helped. I think it's provided an outlet for people to reach out, first of all, so they know who I am and how to reach me. And I get messages from usually they're ASU students, but it's so cool. I love to read them and screenshot them and share them with my colleagues. But I received one recently, and he said, I just want to say thank you for writing about 3D printing. I'm a senior at ASU, and I'm wanting to work in this industry. The stuff you talk about is really inspiring. Thank you so much. Please keep sharing, or something. It was so simple. And I thought, this just made my day, getting a message like that, just knowing one person read the blog, and it inspired one person.
And this is why you do what you do.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's not I don't generate business from it. There's no sales pitches in my blogs. It's all just to
contribution.
Yeah. Yeah. Just spreading the knowledge.
Because that's what you hope, right?
Yeah.
To get people on fire about 3D printing. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I love it. What is there a motto that you live your life by, would you say? Could you sum up something that's like kind of your go-to?
Oh, that's a hard question.
Sorry. Put you on the spot.
It's okay. Let me look at my Twitter, because I've probably, in my Monday motivation tweets, I've probably written something interesting.
You tweet?
I do. Oh, yeah. I love it. And it's funny.
Tweet.
I didn't. I've been on Twitter for years.
Okay.
It started with LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn. It's very popular in my industry. I know not all industries are big on it, but it's a big platform in my industry. And it started there, but then I realized it's kind of fun to do 140 characters or less, sort of sound bites. And it's almost, I really enjoy the challenge of trying to keep things.
Oh, that's an
under
interesting
40
perspective. Because I'm like, I
characters.
only get 140 characters. I'm signing off of this. I'm like, I'm just going to get on where I can really.
Yeah, I trust me, I do long paragraphs, and then it's really, it's really very different with Twitter because you have to keep it short and sweet. But yeah, I tweet pretty much every day and love to keep up with people on there. But I do a Monday motivation tweet every Monday morning from some inspiring quote that I've read. They're not always business related. Sometimes they're just life related. But one I think I've shared in the past, but I also just tell people about this when I talk about books I've read that have inspired me. So it kind of goes in line with what my motto is. But have you read The Alchemist?
Yes, years ago. I feel like I should reread it.
It's an easy read.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
you could probably read it this weekend. That book, I know that, so Paulo Coelho, the author, has millions of fans around the world, multi-millions. And it's one of the top 100 books, I'd say, globally that folks have read. It is, not everybody appreciates the metaphorical style that it's written and the message that it gives. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it as well. I flag every page and underline. And if you see my book, it's, you can tell I like every other page. But the story in the beginning about when the young shepherd boy goes into the souk, and tell me if you remember this part. I'll try to tell it accurately. He goes into the souk and he's told to go in and take note of all the marvels of the souk, the gold, the porcelain, the eggs, the everything, the curtains and pillows, and come back out and tell everyone about what he saw. So he goes in, and this is a poor shepherd boy from
Very humble.
hundreds of miles away. And he came back out and said, okay, I went in and I came back out, and that was, it was a cool experience. And they said, go back in, but take this spoon. And he put some oil on the spoon. And he said, go back in now and really take note of everything in there and take what you want. Go in and it's all for you at this point. Enjoy. And so we went in, and I don't recall exactly if he took things from the souk or if he just was able to touch them and feel them and move around. But he came back out, and the tribe leader said, what happened to the oil in the spoon? And he said, well, what do you mean, what happened to the oil in the spoon? And basically the moral of the story was to, see all the marvels of the world, but don't forget the drops of oil on the spoon. And I may have told that story not in the best way. It's a really easy read
not your book,
in
it's
the
fine.
book, but it's the point of the story.
Yeah.
I think coming from a small-ish town in Texas, I've lived overseas. I get to travel for work. It's really exciting, and I've seen the marvels of the world. But it's really important to not forget the drops of oil on the spoon. Don't forget what's important. And I share that quote when people ask me what my favorite quote is. So I think it could be a motto.
I like that.
In a way. Yeah.
Do you care to share with me what your drops of oil are?
I would say family.
Yeah.
Would be number one. Yeah. Obviously my husband, and then my family in Texas. That would be. It's funny. I love my work.
Yeah.
I love what I do. I love my career. I love my friends. I love my community. But family comes before work. And I think when you're in your 20s and you're climbing the ladder, it's hard to juggle the two. But I think I'm at a place now where it's,
There's more balance.
I've found the balance. Yeah.
Someone told me once there's not really a balance. Right?
The work-life balance.
Yeah, the work-life balance.
It's blended for me.
Well, how can you? Because when you're all in, you're all in. And then when you're all in over here,
Someone commented and said that I work 24 hours a day. And I joked back. I said, well, I sleep a good 9 or 10, so I don't work for 24.
Not quite.
But I don't consider it, it also because it's my business. So that makes a difference in it.
Well, I kind of wanted to touch on that because I wanted people to understand that you left Honeywell.
Mm-hmm.
You left, a salary, benefits, all those things.
Yeah.
Because you're so passionate about this.
Well, I left Honeywell and joined a company that eventually became a part of GE called GE Additive. And so basically you have GE Aviation, GE Healthcare, GE Power, and then GE Additive is a business similar to those. And they manufacture the actual industrial 3D printers, as well as the materials that go in the printers, among other things. And so I worked with them for a couple of years. And so it was a large company to a large company, Fortune 100 to a Fortune 100, and great experience. It's really nice to have all those resources to back you up and help you out. But when you work for yourself, you get to wear every hat.
Yeah.
And it's really hard.
It's hard. It's so hard. Let's just be honest.
There are days I laugh because I think, what am I doing? How did I end up here? And why am I doing this task? And,
because the easy path is just boring.
Yeah.
We could do it and it's just boring.
It's so much more fun to do it for yourself. So I left GE, a little under a year ago, and joined a small group of experts, we'll say, in the industry, and we offer consulting and training services in 3D printing, and that's, talking about work-life balance. To me, working on our website at 10 o'clock at night is not work. That's my I say it's my baby. I've birthed it now, and I take care of it, and it's fun. It's fun. Yeah. You probably feel the same way.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it's coming to light now through this podcast. Is that I think the main message that I want people to really get from my guest and from me is that, I want people just to live the life they are meant to live and be who they really want to be on the inside. Because I think when you really live that passion, the other things, just take care of themselves, like money or, other things. It just comes when you're just living your true self.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you're inspiring to me, because that's what you do.
Yeah, it shows. I think, being passionate about what you do, you don't have to try to tell people about it. It just shows naturally. Yeah. And, I am a female working in a male's world.
Yeah.
I'm not an engineer. I work with all engineers. I'm the only one on my team without an engineering degree. I have a business degree. So I am a different type of asset to the team. But, I definitely took the path less traveled for where I felt like my life would end up. Corporate America sales is where I started, and I've taken a steep turn into being an entrepreneur and working in a tech role / engineering role, and it's challenging. And I did a lot of listening. There were a lot of meetings that I would I don't need to talk. I'm just going to sit and take notes and listen and learn. I did that for a while because I felt like, if I want to be respected in this industry, I need to make sure that I take those steps that will, make me able to contend on the same level as the engineers in the room.
Well, isn't that why God gave us 2 eyes, 2 ears, and only 1 mouth?
Yes, I like this. Yeah,
so that we could listen and watch. And talk.
It's not that hard to do when you're new to an industry, right. Because it's so nerve-wracking. But that was what worked out well for me, and I share that with people when they ask me, how did you find success in 3D printing? Because most people come from a different industry. I say just be prepared to do a lot of listening. just sit back and soak it all in.
Yeah, be a sponge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's like any industry, though.
I think in life, that's
Yeah.
like, I just try to be a sponge and
Yeah.
soak it all in. I think that's why I was so nervous to like talk to you today, because I didn't know anything, much about your industry.
Yeah.
My other guests, I kind of knew a little bit more about the industry, so it was just really easy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to talk to her about?
Yeah.
So it's almost been like I've been a sponge on this episode, which has been kind of different and awesome, to just pick your brain and hear what you have to say. And hopefully we inspired people
Yeah.
to get to Google 3D additive printing. I hope they do.
I do too. Yeah. I mean, it's easy. I could teach you over a glass of wine at happy hour how to use a 3D printer. It's
Well, I think I texted you one time when I was at Michael's craft store.
Yeah.
Because I saw a 3D printer for a kid.
Yeah.
And you're like, buy it.
Yes.
And I was like, maybe next year. Because I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I didn't know if Violet was old enough for it.
Yeah.
But I think she's getting to that point now where she's, very inquisitive and wants to kind of know how things work. And so I think she's kind of ready for something like that now.
It's the perfect time. They have different levels of printers, and then even sometimes just puzzles and almost like Legos that teach people. There's no printer involved, but it teaches the kids that you make things by stacking, because that's all.
Yeah.
If the easiest way for me to describe, and this is just one type of 3D printing, but this is the type that your kids would have in school or that you would have in your home. It is basically a glue gun. So just think of a glue gun, and it's just building layer upon layer on a gantry system technically, but it's just moving around on a robot type arm. And that's all it is. It's really simple. And so for kids, they're teaching now in, I think, even primary school. I believe, but the Arizona Science Center has a create space, and they have, I think, 4 or 5 3D printers, and you can go in and sign Violet up or
Yeah. Well, I was going to tell you, I was going to text you too the other day and let you know I toured a private school for Violet this a couple weeks ago, and they have what they call Dream Lab. You would be like, my mind was blown. I was like, can I just go back to school now? Because this is not the way I learned.
I know.
But it really teaches them to use critical thinking, and then, like how to design and how to, create things. And they partner with people or other kids over in Indonesia, and then they trade designs and
That's so
trade.
cool.
Like, I'm just like, poof.
That's so cool.
I mean, it's changing,
Yeah.
how our kids learn, which is so fascinating.
I know. I wish I could go back to school too. I mean,
I know.
all we had was Oregon Trail and the little red typewriters where we learned how to type. That was it. No internet, no 3D printers. But yeah, it's hopefully someone watching this, especially if they have young kids, because I preach this because my business is in training. We're typically training people who are professionals.
Yeah.
So out of school and working already, it's really, really hard to get them to rethink how they design things when you have gone your whole life designing based off your tools that you have available in order to make something, where we say wipe that slate clean and just design it however you can imagine it.
Yes.
If you start at a young
Imagination.
age. Yeah, because they have a really great imagination. Perfect timing is at a young age. So,
Allison, you're amazing and inspiring. Thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been so much fun.
Thanks again. It was good to see you, and great to catch up. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening to the podcast today, The Kandis Show. I hope you found amazing value. If you did, please subscribe and definitely share with your friends.